and welcome to Thrift Shop Biography. This is the one about Liberace. Thank you for listening. Liberace!
Hi!
You look a bit like Liberace today.
Do I?
Yeah.
Oh! Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
You like your glitz and glamour, don't you? So, we've been reading a book about Liberace written by his lover, Scott Thorson. Some of you may be familiar with him because if you've seen the film Behind the Candelabra,
which is the name of the book,
which is also the name of the book. In fact, the film is of the book. Yeah. Do you know, I have to say, when I saw this, I thought, brilliant, this is going to be such a fun, outrageous camp book, which it kind of is to a certain extent. I did not expect the epilogue, the last 5 lines, it caused involuntary weeping.
Did it?
Yeah, I was so shocked at the very end.
Wow.
What about you? Were you a Liberace fan?
No, I it's one of those, like, I'd love to love Barry Manilow, but I don't like the music.
Oh, really?
And I can't do his music at all.
Really?
Not for me.
Oh, I thought Liberace would be written all. I mean, you look like it.
Thank you. Visually, I think I'm all over it. I Google images of him all the time, and the costume designs and everything like that, and the cars. Oh my god, all that stuff, pianos, everything. But I can't listen to him.
He was quite an obscure talent, really, to have that kind of massive worldwide iconic status. I think it happened really before we were around.
Yeah, and it comes from like almost ragtime and classical, and it's old-fashioned music.
Who name in our lifetime the most famous person who was a showman who just played piano and didn't sing?
Didn't sing?
Yeah, well, Liberace doesn't sing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Richard Clayderman.
I've never heard of him.
What? Really?
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, he sold like millions of albums in the 1980s. He was very boring.
Okay. Yeah, it's unusual. But his act was a lot of banter.
Liberace?
Yeah. Loads of banter. It was half about sharing the experience of people. I learned that through this book.
Okay.
And I didn't know he got kids up on stage and taught them chopsticks and then played around it and made them sound amazing and everyone loved it. It was the banter that...
One thing I really enjoyed about this book is some of the one-liners that Liberace used to say to the crowd. Oh my God, they're so funny.
Yeah.
I can imagine him saying them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's called a showman more than he's called a pianist.
Yeah. So Liberace was born.
Yes.
Born in 1919. His parents are Italian and Polish, so Liberace is his surname.
Yeah.
And in fact, do you know his first... Well, let's talk about his childhood first. I mean, his mum and dad are musicians, right?
Yeah.
But not of any great success.
His dad played the French horn in a symphony orchestra. That's a very respectable musical career.
And she was a concert pianist.
Yeah.
But it says she'd been a concert pianist before her marriage.
Yeah.
So she's, somebody who gave up to have kids.
Incidentally, I didn't know this. He was one of a twin. He was the third child and one of the twin who died at birth.
Like Elvis.
Yeah. And when that happens, I think it does something to a mother's brain.
Oh.
Because Elvis's mum was besotted with Elvis. I know that was their only kid, though. But although Liberace was the third child, it's got to be something to do with that twin dying. So you put all the hope onto the other one, the surviving one.
She had a favourite, didn't she, then?
Yeah, over all the other kids. Very, really such an obvious favourite that it didn't do him much good with his siblings.
Yeah, but the dad left as well, didn't he?
Yeah, happens a lot in orchestras, I've heard.
Happens a lot what?
In orchestras.
Oh,
yes, he had an affair with the fiddle player. No, I made that up. Someone in the orchestra.
He ran off with a fiddler. So he's got an absent dad and an overbearing mother.
That's right.
Freud would say that it could be the cause of homosexuality.
But that would be wrong, because that's how he was born. But Scott says that her love was completely suffocating and damn near incestuous.
Yes.
It's pretty gross, kissing him on the lips all the time, all that. I mean,
it's
really
a horrible
smothering.
observation.
Yeah, it's bad.
That's Liberace's boyfriend saying that his mum's love was so familiar it bordered on incestuous. Yeah. That's gross.
Yeah. And the overriding feeling, well, he actually just says it, is that he always acted like he loved his mother, but inside he couldn't wait to get away from her.
Yeah.
And he just put up with her.
Yeah.
And at the point, obviously, a lot later on when he's at her funeral, not shedding a tear, he says to Scott, "Finally, I'm free." Bloody hell. So it's
Oh, can I just say this book begins at Liberace's funeral, and it really surprised me just how low key it was.
And that's all to do with him dying of AIDS.
Right.
Because it was
1987
when he died, early enough in AIDS that everyone was terrified of even touching somebody, and nobody would have wanted to be near it. Plus it was kept quiet and it was denied, and so they couldn't have a big showbiz funeral.
They actually said that Kirk Douglas and Charlene Tilton were the only two known people who went to Liberace's funeral. Well, good for them, actually.
Yeah, great for them, in a world where his entire family and friends and
who were all happy to be around him and sharing his success.
Famous people and celebrities. Yeah. Legends.
Another thing I said that happens very early in the book is that Scott says that Liberace said, oh no, he was scared of being remembered as that old queen who died of AIDS. Do you know what? I didn't know that, and that's not how I remember him.
That's great.
So I don't think he is remembered
his
as
legacy
that.
Is more bling. It's the bling.
The showmanship. And
if you wore a lot of bling and pounced about, people would say, oh look, Liberace. Yeah. That's what you associate him with.
So I've only ever had good, fun memories of this amazing showman until I read this book and found out what he was really like. So he starts playing the piano at the age of 4.
Yeah.
And he's very good.
Yeah.
And he can play things by ear.
Yeah. Oh, he's obviously an extreme talent.
Yeah.
Because both of his older brother and sister play and they make a career of it, but they're nothing like as talented as he.
So he's surrounded by, it's almost like his brother and sister take from the parents' musical knowledge and stuff and become good. And then Liberace, who's born a bit later, has the parents and the older brother. It's like Michael Jackson having the older Jackson brothers. The older Jackson brothers are great, but by the time the little Michael is born, he sucks it all up and he's amazing. And that's kind of what's happening with Liberace in the piano, right?
He's got this classical training. His mum's really pushing him. He realises fairly early on that he's never going to be the next Beethoven, Chopin, whatever, because he's not that talented.
At composing and stuff, but he's talented at playing.
Playing, but not talented enough to be a concert pianist.
Okay.
Because you have to be exceptional to make a splash in that world. He can do it, but he hasn't got that extra thing. It takes him a long time to find where his niche is.
Figure out his niche,
he has the drive to want to be famous, but he doesn't actually know how. I think he's about 30 by the time he finds it.
Yeah, he is 30.
He's just a working, jobbing pianist, entertainer for that long.
Yeah, playing in bands and stuff and touring all the dive bars.
Yeah.
And just making his living as a musician for a basic wage. Yeah. Playing basic songs.
Exactly. Yeah, his mum's trying to get him towards a classical career, but at 17 he joins that band and is playing all the honky-tonks. And he immediately loves it. In the underworld, the smoky bars, and that's where he first finds gay men. Up to that point, he knew he was attracted to men, but because of his Catholic upbringing, he thought it was an abomination. Realising he was gay devastated him. He thought it was a mental illness. He was taught to believe it was a mental illness.
It's the 1930s. Yeah. It was classed as a mental illness.
Yeah. It's the 1920s for some of that. Add to all that the religious aspect. It's hell. He's going to hell.
It's horrendous.
Yeah, it's really horrendous. Plus, you get put in prison. So then seeing blokes in these bars and realising they're together, that's his mind-blowing thing.
Yeah, something just clicked in his head that he wasn't on his own.
He's not alone.
That there were other gay people
so
about.
He has to get to about 17 to actually find out for the first time that he's not alone. And because his dad left, and that wasn't done in that day and age, his mum said to the kids, you cannot tell a soul. Tell everybody your dad's still at home and we're a happy family. And that's how he learned to keep massive secrets.
Right.
His mum basically told them to lie and he never looked back.
Yeah, right.
And very soon after that, his mum got a boyfriend, but within a year, I think, of the dad leaving, and then carried on that relationship secretly. Because they married quite a few years later.
Right.
He moved in at some point, but let's keep it all secret.
So it's a family of secrets.
Family of secrets,
But he gets to go out on stage and play his piano.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great that he has that release at least.
Yeah. And his showbiz name is Walter Busterkeys.
I love that. Why did he not keep that? Walter Busterkeys. It's a fantastic name.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Walter Busterkeys. oh, somebody else needs to use that.
Yeah, they
it
do,
should
actually.
not go
that
to
name
waste.
is available.
Yeah. So he's 17, he's playing in bands, and he does that for like the next 10 years, right? Playing in hotel chains and stuff. He's just plodding along as he has aspirations to be famous, but doesn't quite know how to be because he's not a rock star or a film star. He's a piano player, but he has a semi-comfortable existence playing hotel bars. And
when he was 21, he was playing the piano, just classical tunes and stuff, and he was taking requests, and somebody in some bar asked for a popular tune, just like a pop song of the time, and so he thought, oh, that'd be funny to play it in the style of a classical, and everyone was singing along, and he just hit it, and that became his niche thing.
Shtick.
Yeah. So it's popular tunes played in classical styles.
Yeah, that sounds really good fun.
Yeah, I'm sure it'd be great fun if you could get beamed back in time, like go to a Vegas Liberace gig. It'd be a fun thing.
Yeah.
If you take just the record and play it at home, not as fun. Yeah. I'm thinking, for me.
So what we haven't said is this is all happening in the state of Wisconsin. He's become a big fish in the state of Wisconsin.
The Wisconsin pond.
Which, yes. And so then he does strike out and he goes to New York.
Yeah.
Because he wants to find his fame and fortune.
Yeah.
But of course, nobody knows him in New York and nobody cares.
He sinks right to the bottom of the pile.
And he's playing like piano at rehearsals.
Yeah, he's traipsing out to Newark and, the outer areas.
So he's a real jobbing musician
Really, yeah. But then he does do some rehearsal piano playing for Broadway shows, which introduces him to a whole world of the gay community again. And makes a lot more friends and networks in that way.
Oh, at this point, World War II is breaking out and all the men are being conscripted, but he has a cyst on his spine.
Yeah.
Which means he can't go and fight for his country.
It says if he'd said he was gay, he would have also not been allowed to go, which is actually amazing in itself.
But he would never have admitted to it. Isn't
that nuts, though?
Yeah, the gay people couldn't fight in the war. Well, but until even our lifetime, you couldn't serve in the United States Army if you were gay.
Yeah, if you said you were.
But what happened with the war is that lots of other musicians and pianists who were fit and not gay went to war,
and didn't come back.
Which meant that
his competition diminished.
Yeah. So he started getting more jobs.
Yeah.
So there's a good side to the World War II. Less pianists.
Yeah.
Sorry, fewer pianists.
Yes.
So also when he's in New York, so he's not really getting anywhere, he starts writing letters to everyone.
Yeah.
Saying, hi, I'm Liberace, I play the piano. Nobody responds to him because nobody knows who the hell he is apart from one man in Las Vegas.
Yes.
At the Last Frontier Hotel, which is owned by Howard Hughes. He gets a 6-week run there with decent money.
Yeah, he's on $750 a week.
In 1940.
43 or something.
Amazing.
Yeah, and then it got extended and he got $1,500 a week.
That's incredible.
Insane. I mean, in a few years, he was the highest paid entertainer in the world.
Yeah. I mean, the money that he gets later in his career is mind-boggling.
It's probably partly that he's the highest paid entertainer because of Vegas. Because those casinos obviously were raking it in, and so they're probably the highest people who could pay.
It's when he's playing these hotel bars in Vegas, he kind of comes into contact with the mafia.
I know.
Actually, and they really love him.
Yeah, the mafia love Liberace. You couldn't make it up. And Bugsy Siegel and Al Capone were massive fans.
Amazing.
Kind of amazing and terrifying.
Yeah.
And then Bugsy Siegel's trying to sign him.
But Liberace knows it's terrifying because he's very resistant.
Yeah.
But then also realising that also being resistant to the mafia is not a great idea as well.
So he doesn't know what to do. Yeah. And there's a point where he's trying to play for time, and then Bugsy Siegel says, I know you're going back to New York. I'm driving to New York. Do you want a lift? And he's like, shit, how do I say no? I can't. So he says, I've got something I have to take care of tomorrow, so I won't be able to get a lift with you. I'll have to leave on my own the next day. On that journey, Bugsy Siegel sets off from Vegas and is shot and killed in his car. Wow. And had Liberace been in that car, he would have been shot too. Crazy.
So he's playing all of these cabaret shows at these supper clubs, and it's a kind of place where you do like 2 shows a day, and invariably the first one's okay and the second one nobody comes out to eat at 10 o'clock, so it can be quite boring and not many people are there, right?
But he got so popular, didn't he?
Yeah. Like Sonny and Cher, the music, until she started back-chatting the audience.
Yeah.
And that's what Liberace does. Yeah. So that is a real winner. In Las Vegas Cabaret, chatting back to your audience seems to be...
it's really good. I mean, he says things like, the one I remember, is that if somebody called him something, he'd go, "Oh, do you like the ring on this finger?" Obviously, I'm sticking up my middle finger here. It doesn't actually spell that out, but you kind of guess. And he had amazing rings, of course.
I love somebody said to him, "How can you play piano with all of those rings on your fingers?" He said, "Very well."
Yeah. Okay, it's really sharp. And he put a candelabra on the piano, which we all know about, obviously, inspired by Chopin. Actually said at the time, in the 40s, there was a couple of really popular films that came out about Chopin, maybe Beethoven, I can't remember which other one. And they were really popular, and that really helped.
We should say that at this point where he's playing in these clubs in Las Vegas, he's just wearing a tuxedo.
Yeah.
And the candelabra on his piano is like the one embellishment of his set.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So it's when he's playing one of these later shows. Oh, there's a storm coming, which means more people come into the show. Yeah. And it just so happens that one of the people is a big TV producer. Yeah. And he sat there, there's not many people in the audience. But Scott says that it doesn't matter if there was 5 people in the audience. Liberace would do that show like it was a packed house. He just had that energy.
That's what he said. He never, ever didn't give anything less than 200%.
He's a consummate professional.
Show. Yeah. His whole life, whether he was playing a tiny bar, Madison Square Garden, he gave everything. If he was ill, everything. He never missed a show. And amazing.
This TV producer loved him, so he kept coming back to see him, and then he chatted to him, and then he offered him a show on the TV. This is 1949. This is real early days.
It's originally a fairly local channel, wasn't it?
Yeah. And it was a 15-minute show.
Yeah.
So they did that for a few weeks and it was successful. And then the Dinah Shore show came off TV for a bit and they replaced her with Liberace. So she was a big star and they replaced her show with his, which shows how much faith they had in it. And then by the time 1953 came around, he had his own show, which was a 30-minute variety show. And that ran for 3 seasons.
It was huge.
He's hugely successful. And then all of a sudden he's catapulted and people know who Liberace is.
In a time when you couldn't be gay, he was very camp. But I guess he would have been a housewife's choice because that rapport with women he really had.
Scott does say that at this point his fame just increased exponentially, which made him very worried about hiding his homosexuality.
That's right.
Because at that time he realised if it did come out, then his career would be over as quickly as it had begun.
Yeah, plus he had a certain amount of freedom playing the smaller bars and stuff to meet men afterwards, and then you had to be really careful.
So his huge fame meant that his gigs got bigger. And he did end up playing the Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah. Oh, P.S. Yeah. He was earning so much money that he built himself a massive house in California and he built a piano-shaped pool, which actually made him even more famous because they photographed it, put it in all the magazines, and it really sort of made him a visual person.
Yeah.
It made him a visually iconic person. It was the beginning of the visual aspect.
This amazing showmanship and stuff. Yeah. So through TV, his fame was growing. He's getting into the tabloid magazines, etc. And then he gets to play this massive gig at the Hollywood Bowl, right?
Yeah.
And it's there. I think during rehearsal, he actually walks to the back of the Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah, and realised how tiny he would look.
Yeah, in his black tuxedo.
Yeah. And then he realises he should be wearing white. Now, black performers were already wearing white tuxedos. Yet again, a bit like rock and roll. They were always doing it first. He was the first white man to wear a white tuxedo on stage ever, which of course got the attention of everybody. And everyone loved it, and it developed quite substantially from there. Like, it had the sequins, had the ruffles, and then it became the capes. He got amazing designers involved, theatrical designers of Hollywood, and it got so massive that he had to have people walking on with his train, and then eventually it evolved into a car, essentially to drive on to carry his coat. And he always had a chauffeur, a young man, that was usually his boyfriend of the day, that would come out, open the car for him, let him out, he'd carry his humongous mink train, lay it out across the stage, drive the car off, and at some point I guess he'd have to come back on to take the coat away. I think he did. But yeah, he became legendary for his
and that become as much part of his act as the actual piano playing, right?
I've seen this stuff, by the way.
Have you?
Yeah.
Did you go to the museum?
The museum had closed when I went to Vegas, but they just had a special exhibition in a casino, so it was a core of it. But I saw the cars, they're absolutely totally blinged in Diamante in some of those outfits. Spectacular.
So it's a winning combination. He's got his outfits, the showmanship, the banter with the audience, and great piano playing.
Yeah.
So he's not just being Richard Clayderman where he's just sat really boringly playing. He's actually making a whole show out of it.
Yeah, and really this is what Vegas is known for, the full all-round entertainment. Maybe he started it.
This is very early in terms of the music business. This is pre-rock and roll, right? No, it's probably at the cusp of rock and roll. It's the early 50s,
I mean,
right?
By the mid-50s, he was giving advice to Elvis.
Yeah, right.
And he gave him one of his outfits.
So by the time Elvis got to Las Vegas in that white rhinestone jumpsuit,
he
that's
was totally
Liberace,
copying
right?
Liberace. Yeah. Did you know? I knew that because I know everything about Elvis.
Yeah. Amazing.
There's lots of pictures of them with their arms around each other and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, they were buddies.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, hair's a big thing. We should mention hair.
Yeah, because he doesn't have any.
Doesn't have any. That's a wig. Maybe everyone knew that, but...
No, but he had all these swimming pools. Scott says that he has all these swimming pools, but he won't go in them because his wig would come off.
Oh, that's such a shame. You could swim without getting your hair wet.
Yeah, he could put a swimming cap
anything.
on. Yeah.
What a shame. Go in your own pool. Kind of shaped pool. Tragic.
By the mid-50s, he was picking up $50,000
Yeah,
a week.
he was at the Riviera.
That's ridiculous.
Opened the Riviera.
Wow.
It's amazing.
As his fame is increasing, he's actually stepping out and being seen with women. Just because that's what you kind of have to do.
Yeah.
So he even gets engaged at one point in the early 50s.
Yeah.
Then he comes to England. Oh, by the way, Betty White used to be one of his beards. Did you know that?
No.
That's not in this book, but I found that out very recently.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he toured in the UK.
1959.
1959. He toured to the UK and they reviewed him.
They played it was the London Palladium, which is the best place you could possibly play in.
Well, of course. Liberace, nothing but the best.
There weren't arenas then, though.
Oh, of course.
It wasn't even an option. That's as big as it got then.
A UK newspaper reviewed him and heavily insinuated that he was a homosexual. They said he was a fruit.
Fruit, yes.
Yeah. And that was enough for Liberace to sue.
Yeah.
And he won.
Yeah, and the front page said, "I'm no homo," said Liberace, and he won 22.5 grand. And once you've done that, though, there's no coming back from that.
Well, that's the thing.
That's actually sealed it. Even if he thought 10 years later he might want to.
Well, attitudes changed, and even in the 1980s. When let's face it, if any performer could have come out in the 1980s, Liberace was probably the one who could have done it. But he's sued somebody for calling him gay.
He can't.
So he can't come out even if he wants to.
No, I don't know if he ever would have wanted to, actually. But
maybe after his mum died.
Yeah. I mean, Barry Manilow only came out, within the last... don't look at me like that.
Barry Manilow's gay?
Are you being funny?
Barry Manilow is not gay.
Are you being funny? I can't tell. You are being funny.
Is Barry Manilow gay?
Stop it.
What? He's not.
Huh?
What?
Yeah.
Barry Manilow.
He's been with the same bloke for 30, 40 years or something.
No,
ridiculous.
he hasn't. Why do I know that?
I don't know. I'm still trying to work out if you're having a laugh.
I had no idea Barry Manilow was gay. Yeah, no.
Whoa. In my mind, he's kind of the next Liberace, even though he doesn't dress like him. But it just seems so nuts that he had to hide it. This is 2024. Can't remember when he's come out, but it's really within the last 10 years or something.
Didn't he go out with Barbara Streisand?
Probably for dinner, yes.
Barbara Streisand was
discovered by Liberace. Yeah. Brought to Vegas by Liberace.
And everyone said, "What? Get her off the stage."
Yeah, and she was really frumpily dressed. And they're like, "This isn't going to work.
Yeah.
We don't want her." And he said, "If you don't have her, you won't have me." So he forced them to put Barbara Streisand on stage, and she obviously took off.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah. Never knew that.
I never knew that.
No.
Well, I didn't know about
Barry Manilow. Oh, my God.
Do you know what we haven't done? We haven't told about... Scott wrote this book. It's kind of his autobiography, so we should tell the listeners about Scott's life.
He doesn't start talking about his own life
no, it's true.
About now, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, then let's talk about him now.
Let's talk about him.
So he and his brothers and sisters, again, had an absent dad and a very poorly mother.
Yeah, mentally ill.
And so he and his brothers and sisters were going into foster homes and orphanages.
Yeah, scattered about, separated a lot.
And then the mum would get better and think she could have her kids. But actually, she'd go and drag them out after they were settled in a foster home and then not be well again. And so they'd have to go back into other foster homes.
Charlie Chaplin all over again.
Yeah. So it was a very unsettled childhood that Scott had. And to the point that when he was 15, I mean, he had an older brother who was like 30.
Wayne, who crops up a lot.
Yeah, he's in San Francisco, and he says, well, look, my brother's old enough. Can I go and live with him? And they arrange for him to go and live with his older brother. But also, it sounds like that wasn't the best environment for him either.
But San Francisco is where he met men and discovered his sexuality.
Yeah.
But also, he really loved animals. I think he had a horse somehow, or he had a dog. And so he wrote letters. When he was 14, he wrote letters to farms and said, would you consider taking an orphan boy? I've got a horse and a dog. Would you take them as well? I'd love to live on a farm. And one couple replied, yes. And they took him with his animals. And he had a lovely time for a year and a half, and then the bloke got cancer. And they had to let him go. It's such a shame. But those were the people he considered the family, the closest to his parents he ever had. So I know, but isn't that great that he wrote those letters? He's a good fellow. He had something about him.
Well, he was looking for something, wasn't he, that he didn't have? And
made an effort to make it happen.
Yeah.
It's just unlucky. So by the time he gets to 18, he's doing a bit of work with animals for films and stuff, and he's definitely his career was going to be with animals, maybe a vet, when his friend took him to the Vegas Hilton to see Liberace.
Yeah, so he befriended this other older guy who was a choreographer who knew lots of stars. And
he didn't know Liberace. I think he knew the producer or something like that.
But they managed to get backstage.
Enough to get backstage, yeah. And he said he sat there in this gig, never seen anything like it, and went, this man is so gay. And he's looking around the audience going, doesn't everyone realise that? And this young chauffeur boy comes out and goes, well, that's his boyfriend. Doesn't anyone notice that? Because to him it's blatantly obvious. And he's like, they don't know. And at this point, he's 18 and Liberace's 59. So
there's a gap.
A big gap.
Yeah. And they go backstage and it's all very cordial. And then Liberace invites him to his house a few days later.
Yeah.
And
I think it was the next day, actually.
Was it?
Yeah. His house is completely over the top, and he's describing in the book all the different items he sees and this and that. He says he found out later it's called palatial kitsch.
Right.
It's great. Yeah. But then he's like, he grew up in orphanages and foster homes. The difference, he's only 18. Yeah. And he's come from that to that. That's absolutely insane. It's obviously blowing his mind, and he's not attracted to it, and he's not attracted to Liberace.
No, definitely not. Because it's so far, his age is so far away from his own. He's 18 and Liberace's almost 60.
Yeah.
But Liberace has little dogs. Which, of course, Scott loves the dogs. Yeah. Liberace's favourite dog is quite poorly. It's got weepy eyes. Yeah. And Scott says, well, I have a ointment that can fix this. And Liberace's, you're going to save my little baby, or something like that.
Yeah.
And then Scott says, sure, I'll get you some ointment and I'll send it to you. And then they kind of leave.
He forgets.
And then Scott forgets until he puts his hand in his pocket and finds Liberace's number, like 2 weeks later. Yeah. So that actually shows there wasn't really any attraction on Scott's.
He did say Liberace couldn't take his eyes off him.
Yeah, well, he's a dirty old man.
Yeah.
So then he phones up Liberace and says, I forgot to send you the stuff for your dog. I'll send it. Liberace's like, no, fly out with it. I'll pay for you to come. But
he drives, so he's got some control, which is key, I think, because he's already he's already making sure that he's in control of the situation. He thinks he is.
And so he goes and hangs out with Liberace again.
But then, they go up to the penthouse for dinner at 3 a.m. because he's hanging out watching the show from backstage. Right, and the current chauffeur's knocking about.
Jerry.
Yeah.
Yeah, the younger guy who's fulfilling that role in Liberace's life. Yeah.
And he's already observed from the last visit they weren't getting on.
Right.
And arguing is really tense. So now they go for dinner at 3 a.m. at this penthouse and it's all laid on by a chef. And he ends up weeping into his arms. I'm not happy in my relationship. I'm so upset. Nobody's there for me.
I think that's totally from the word go. That's Liberace being
manipulated.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
A grown man doesn't
cry
come on. That.
You're trying to win him over. You're trying to be a victim.
Yeah.
I totally thought that.
Yeah.
Oh, for once we agree on somebody lying. I'm usually all believing everything they say. It's because it's told from the point of view of Scott. If Liberace told me he was weeping, crying, I'd have probably believed him.
But it does turn out, Scott doesn't know this yet, but Jerry, the current chauffeur, is another of Liberace's conquests. Now, I don't know if it says this in the book.
Because he's living in the house. And he hasn't even moved out yet because he's got 6 months to go on his contract or something.
That's right. So, when Liberace is crying to Scott, Scott says, why didn't you just ask him to leave? And he's like, because there's a work contract. He's got 6 months left on it. Oh, my God. I forgot. Jerry, the current boyfriend, was married with kids.
That's right. And it said that he said he was straight. And he'd prized him away. I think at first he might have even brought the wife with him or something.
Ah, right. And then they went on tour. You've got to work
for me, which is probably why he had a contract.
Yeah. Then they went on tour and they said the wife couldn't come with their kids. They had to stay. Yeah. So he found a way to isolate that young man and groom him, even though he was married with kids. Yeah. And he's doing exactly the same thing now with Scott. Yeah, and the staff all know it. The staff are really unpleasant to Scott because they're just like, you're just one of a row of people. They tell him. Yeah, and that'll happen to you and you'll be out in the street and wait till it happens. You mean nothing to him. And he can't believe it. Yeah. Oh, mind you, we haven't said how he got enticed in. The crying was the first part. The next part was him going, oh, I know, you could come and work for me. I'll pay you this much a week. You can live in my house. Yeah. And he's actually been offered some stability. It really helps that his background is what it is because he's never had a real home. He's never had... it's everything he wants and more, seemingly so.
Yeah, but he knows right from the start it's probably going to involve sex. Yeah. And he doesn't want that. He's not attracted to this man, but he knows it's going to be part of the deal and he's willing to accept that. Mm-hmm. So he is like whoring himself out, but it's part of the deal. And then he accidentally falls in love with him. That's how it happens, that way around, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. To the point that when he agrees on that day to work with Liberace makes a pass at him, and Scott says, no, not ready to do this. And Liberace says, well, come and stay in my bed. I promise to stay on my side. But he said that when they woke up in the morning, he's like right in there. Yeah. I kind of get it. From Scott's point of view, I get it. Liberace has offered him everything he never had.
Yeah. It's like $300 a week. That's a lot if you're an orphan boy with nothing.
It's what Whitney Houston was on in her first record contract.
That's very true. Yeah. And that was 10 years later. Yeah.
She was
Whitney Houston.
Yeah.
She had a talent. So, incidentally, sexually, it's quite weird because talking about having talent, I don't really understand the ins and outs of it, literally, with Scott, because later on he says he was such a sexual pervert, he was asking me to do things that I found horrific, like anal sex.
Yeah, right.
Hang on.
The standard.
Well, it said he'd evolved in their relationship to asking things that were horrific to me, like anal sex. But hang on, what were you... So, what was... Oh, okay, I don't really understand.
What don't you understand?
If he didn't, what sort of sex were they having?
Up until that point, if then the disgusting thing that he then wanted was anal sex. Yeah. Oral sex and
that's enough for somebody who's got an insatiable sex drive? Oh, I don't really understand that. But anyway, it comes up in the book, that does. So
I know it does.
I did wonder. Yeah. I read that and I was like, huh? When it said things that were absolutely outrageous to me, I thought it was going to be something really shocking. And I'm like, oh.
But do you not think anal sex is shocking?
But no, I don't. I thought it was going to be, I don't know, a whole list of other things.
Disgusting.
I don't know,
a gerbil up the arse.
That'll do. I was going to say a threesome, but a gerbil will cover it as well.
A threesome with a gerbil.
Yes. I suppose that counts as a third.
So Scott is now working at... Did Liberace name his house like Elvis named Graceland? I didn't find that.
The Cloisters, that was the second home he bought. Well, right, as soon as he got that California house built and made and palatialised, he bought an apartment nearby because his bloody mum moved in. And his brother and sister. Obviously, this house was massive. So he had to have an apartment so he could have his liaisons.
So he could do bumming.
Away from his family, of course he did.
He had a bumming house.
Yeah, he did. Somewhere to hole up.
What, and he called it... and he... And he called it the Cloisters.
Yeah. No!
What?
That's a third place.
Oh, okay.
I was just running through the history of the houses. Okay. Yeah. So he had that place. Then he found an abandoned...
An abandoned mine shaft.
Then he found an abandoned 32-room hotel.
Ah.
Which is That's huge, right?
Yeah.
So he bought that and turned it into a place he called the Cloisters and totally pimped that up to be palatial. He had 18 pianos, grand pianos, in his different properties. He never touched one of them.
I know, isn't that strange?
Yeah, and when you Google him, you see he's always by every piano. All his pictures in his house are by the piano, but he never played them because playing was work.
Why. Okay, playing was work.
And he didn't want to play at home at all. He said he practiced enough for a lifetime, didn't need to touch it, didn't want to touch them. But it was part of his image.
Yeah. So Scott's gone to work for him as some kind of...
Yeah.
But I mean, he is working for him, though, isn't he? He is actually doing work. He's not just being a boyfriend that he's dragging around. He's helping out, isn't he?
Yeah, he's helping out. I mean, but one of the ridiculous things, he's almost just following him around those. He's a +1. I mean...
he's a companion.
He's a companion. That's what he's paid for. Liberace's addicted to shopping. He says he can't even go one day without buying something. There's no eBay.
Yeah.
You know, he has to go out to a shop, even if it's just food shopping. And he's like, oh, look at this. This is lovely food. Or, oh, look at this new sofa. I'll have that. Whatever it is, whether it's a sausage sandwich.
Oh.
A banquette.
He spends his hard-earned money as fast as he makes it, right? But actually, he's making so much you could never spend that amount, right?
He's making 150 grand a week minimum. Wow. And at some point he gives Scott 25,000 just to decorate the houses for Christmas. But that's nothing. That's a sixth of your weekly wage.
Yeah. And he does say, I love this quote, he says, I don't want to be the richest piano player in the grave.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's enjoying the spoils of his success.
Yeah.
Well, good for him.
Yeah. And there's a point where he thinks that it'll be a good tax break if he puts loads of his spare stuff into a museum and he can
charge people to come and see him.
Charge people to come and see it. And it also was going to be a tax write-off because he was going to fund up-and-coming talented musicians.
Oh, yeah.
So he's like, brilliant, this is going to be great. Sets up this museum, and his bonus is as well that he's emptied loads of various houses so he can shop more to fill the holes. So... what he doesn't realise is this museum is huge. It's the first time Vegas has ever had a museum of an entertainer full of their costumes and clothes and extravagant stuff. And it's a massive hit. And then he's absolutely gutted because he's promised all this money to basically a charity. And it's making him a mint, but he's not getting any of it. So he's sort of a bit upset about that.
So he's the highest paid entertainer in the world at this point, right?
Yeah.
Just from playing the piano.
And entertaining people. And wearing costumes.
Yeah.
Driving on cars and having young boys chauffeur you.
How do you honestly feel about him, this 60-year-old man, procuring 18-year-old boyfriends?
I mean, I realise how damaged this man is. This is a boy. He's had a really rough childhood. I'm just taking it from this person's perspective.
From Scott's
that's all we've got.
Yeah.
He's really, really damaged. His life is absolutely messed up by this man. He got completely swept up in his wealth. And he says, I mean, some more happens before we can properly conclude, but it all went to his head and he thought he was equal to Liberace. He thought he had equal power and that he was important. He completely forgot all those people that said, this will happen to you.
Yeah.
And he got overconfident. And then when he got kicked out, it destroyed him.
Well, you know what? Liberace was making him feel like that. He was very affectionate, Liberace. As much as it was sexual and as generous as he was also emotionally quite generous in totally telling Scott that he was the centre of his world and they would always be together. Yes, I understand how Scott believed that.
And they were in love. And when Liberace said to him, I love you, it's the first time Scott had ever heard those words.
It's really sad.
Yeah, and so he was a lover, a boyfriend, a partner, and a father figure.
Yeah.
Which he wanted all of those. Yeah. And family. We should mention this plastic surgery.
Yeah.
Because actually that's where it all went horribly wrong because of the drugs involved.
Oh, damn. So Liberace obviously is ageing and he's a showman and he wants to fix his face to not look so old. So he goes off and has plastic surgery. I don't think Scott really wants him to do it, but of course he can't talk Liberace out of it. And Scott says when he goes and visits him in the hospital, he's horrified because he just looks like a piece of beat up meat. Yeah. But when the bandages come off and he heals, he does look
20 years younger.
Of course, yeah. And then Liberace says to Scott, well, you know, you could fix your nose, you could have a bit of work done. I mean, this guy's like 20 at this point.
He suggests it, but he's pretty much insisting.
And he says he wants him to look like Liberace. Yeah. He's doing it. He's creating Scott in his own image in this one. That's so narcissistic.
If you look like me, and gets a portrait of himself out and shows the plastic surgeon, look, you could do this to him. They're all looking at his face, going, how could we make him look like you?
So they do it.
Yeah.
So Scott has plastic surgery.
He adds a little dimple in his chin.
Yeah, he says that he adds that himself. Liberace doesn't have a dimple, but that was Scott's way of controlling what was happening. So he has the surgery, but the pain is so bad after that he gets hooked on...
Well, yeah. The plastic surgeon gives him, even during the process, Quaaludes, a type of legal coke.
Yes, medicinal cocaine, isn't it?
And amphetamines.
Yeah.
So he's on that. Oh, no, that was to lose weight. Those were all to lose weight, because first he had to lose a lot of weight.
Did he?
So he looked younger anyway, before he had the surgery. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was all to lose weight, which worked really well. And then also the pain.
Yeah.
And then it just never stopped.
I know, but Liberace's at that level of fame like Michael Jackson was, where any doctor at that point, no one will say no. And all right, you might go with good intentions to lose a bit of weight and have reconstructive surgery. Yeah. But once you're on that kind of medication for a short period, you want more. Yeah. Because it's addictive.
This Dr. Stark is really not right. Mm-hmm. He's rock and roll himself. He's an alcoholic for a start. Yeah, he's in no shape to tell anyone. He's not a good doctor. He's a rock and roll, on the edge, dodgy doctor, basically.
Who can dispense whatever drug you need for a price.
Yeah, completely off the radar.
Yeah, so this is a beginning, you're right, this is a beginning of Scott's downfall, at least.
It really is. And I think their relationship.
Yeah.
Because Liberace never got hooked on drugs and didn't approve of drugs. So he really wanted Scott off the drugs all the time. And Scott developed a proper coke habit. I mean, it just evolved into just a plain coke habit, which of course gives you that arrogance and just makes you a bit of a pain in the arse, I think. And so at that point, I don't really blame Liberace for getting tired of him. He put up with him for about another 2 years, being a full-on coke addict.
Yeah, I also think that's quite convenient for Liberace to be getting fed up with him, because he's getting a bit
older.
old.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, and he wants another 18-year-old.
Yeah, that's very true, and that's what he did.
I get there's a genuine relationship here between Scott and Liberace. Whatever way you look at it, they were together for 5 years. And I think there were real elements of companionship and dependability, even if they weren't necessarily sexually compatible. I think there was affection there. I mean, Scott rarely does, even when he split up from Liberace, when Liberace's dying, he does say really nice things about him.
He does.
He's not saying that guy ruined my life and I regret the day I met him. No. He doesn't say that at any point.
No. And despite what Scott put him through after they split up, trying to sue him for 5 years in and out of the courts, when he was dying, Liberace was dying, he still called Scott
him,
and said to him, well, he kept checking on his health, so he still really cared for him. And then said to him, you made me the happiest.
Yeah, and I kind of get that. I think there's real elements of grooming and even Stockholm syndrome in this relationship.
I totally agree. But I think there was also real love. And if it wasn't for the coke habit, it still could have gone to his head, the whole rich thing. Because early on he got rid of a lot of the staff, didn't he? He did take a bit of control, Scott.
Scott did, yeah. But he also, the staff that he liked and were good at their jobs, he got them pay rises and stuff. Because
he actually did.
So, he was probably getting rid of the people that didn't like him and was being nice to the people who did.
Yeah, and like the bloke who tucked Liberace into bed every night and all that stuff, which was a bit weird.
Liberace is a bit weird anyway.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I get that, he did get to the point where he was surrounded by people. So so their relationship lasts until it doesn't. Yeah. Scott is becoming a drug addict, which is not great for Liberace. No. But Scott is joining him on stage. He's become the chauffeur, right? So he's part of the show. He's part of his life. There's photographs of him in the newspaper, but Liberace says, oh, this is my friend, or this is my driver, or whatever. But things do deteriorate, and then a new 18-year-old turns up. Yeah. So Liberace is he's looking for the next one. Yeah. And it isn't until Scott kept in touch with his last foster mother. And when she died, Scott went to her funeral.
Yeah, and he said it's one of the only nights he's ever spent apart from Liberace.
And then it was on that night that Liberace moved in this new 18-year-old.
Yeah, Kerry James, that had been knocking around for a while.
He had him lined up. He was just waiting for him. And then the minute Scott needed to spend a night away, Liberace wasted no time in getting this guy into his bed. It's disgusting. Liberace is disgusting.
Well, it's that cowardly behaviour again. But he had been going around saying, I've created a monster, to Scott, who was really a drug addict.
No, I get that.
But those are the exact same words he'd used on the last boyfriend, who was also angry and argumentative, and they just started rowing all the time.
So at one point, Scott was the new 18-year-old that was shipped in, and the other guy had to go. And people said to him, this will be you one day.
Yes, and basically, that's all very well. It's a natural end of a relationship. That honestly was naturally ending. It's just a way.
Yeah.
You can't be a night without somebody, just so needy.
Yeah.
And in the way it's dealt with is so cowardly, not even having a reasonable conversation, saying it's over. Yeah. Just flying him out to a funeral and then replacing him overnight in their bed as well, which is a massive kick in the teeth. And he was so angry, he yelled and yelled and yelled and smashed things up and said, I'll kill you. And he was genuinely scared, Liberace, and pretty much shut it down and got him out.
Well,
the locks changed. And
Scott went to the apartment. Liberace's in the palatial home with the 18-year-old, and then Scott goes to an apartment. But see, this is a terrible thing about Liberace, like Elton John and all the others. They don't go to that person face to face and say, I want this over. They get their staff to get rid of them.
Yeah, I know.
It's despicable,
It is. It's really cowardly.
Do you know, actually, we've read Rod Stewart and Elton John, and I remember you saying in the Rod Stewart one, he's having all these girlfriends. They must be devastated. We're not hearing the story from their point of view.
That it does to these people.
Story from Scott is kind of the story of the Rod Stewart girlfriends, the Elton John
you're hearing it from the girlfriends.
About how devastated they are. They've given up their lives to be with these people. They're being charmed and told they're the best thing on earth, and then the next day they got a plane ticket on their bed and the manager saying get out of town.
They believe they're worth something, and then they're made to feel worthless. Like that.
So I do not judge Scott for how he reacted.
No, I don't. I kind of admire it.
Yeah.
Because he didn't roll over and take it. He literally...
He did. I know he had a problem with anal sex. So he was in the apartment and he said that he woke up to have 4 people stood around him trying to manhandle him out of
He's off his head at this point, He's completely a drug addict.
But what happened when Liberace's staff went to remove Scott from that apartment, he locked himself in the bedroom and phoned the mafia and said, I'm having real trouble here. And they sent 4 men to get Scott out.
Yeah.
And then Scott said as soon as he was out, the maids went in and cleaned up the apartment because Liberace was going to be there in a few minutes. They literally got him out in time for Liberace to turn up as if nothing had happened, didn't even have to see Scott.
Yeah.
That's so cowardly.
And in all that haze, I think it was probably a drug binge haze of...
Right.
That's how I see it. And these people are trying to kill him and it's all gone over the top.
Yeah.
And he doesn't understand. He sees his older brother, Wayne. He doesn't even know how he ended up being part of it.
Yeah, he said that Wayne came with them to get rid of him.
Yeah, now that's given me Mariah Carey flashbacks. And the family are betraying you as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe Scott really went off the rails.
I reckon he did.
And his family, maybe perhaps Liberace and everyone were actually concerned for him.
I think they had every right to be because he was massively betrayed that very night.
So they're over, aren't they?
Yeah. This is when it all goes into this. That was 5 years of his life. The next 5 years is him trying to fight to get anything back. He's got no money. He's got none of his stuff. He's got cars, amazing clothes, rings, some furniture. He's got his own apartment. He can't get access to any of it. And he knows that every boyfriend who's been before has just gone quiet. But he says, I don't want to go quietly, partly because I want my stuff. And massive part of that is because he's a drug addict and he needs the money to fund that. And the other part is that he knows if he contests it, he'll keep Lee in his life. Yeah,
I know. I really felt for him. He said one of the reasons he was doing it is because he still wanted Liberace's attention.
Yeah, and because he was cut off, locks changed, numbers changed. Yeah. He thought, I'll never get to speak to him again. It was a way of staying close.
But you know what? Knowing how Liberace was, how in the closet he was, how he could never admit to being gay now, actually to pull that lawsuit on him as his previous lover boyfriend is pretty low.
No, I think I keep saying it. He's a raging drug addict, desperate for money, and that has to be massively fueling it.
And also, one thing, you know, I wouldn't take Liberace to court because he's one of the richest men in the world. Yeah. It's just like, how do you sustain that? Yeah. People with that kind of money can just keep going and going. And
exactly, but he thought he had the winning card because he thought outing him as gay was his winning card.
It would shut him up, and so Liberace would pay him off and get his stuff back. He did say that the press really made a thing of it being the Palimony case, which was only one. I think he brought like 12 charges against Liberace. Palimony was one of them. The others were more concerned about him just getting his stuff back.
Yeah. There's a legal term for that, and it goes into it a lot. But
it's extension of
stuff
goods or something
like that. Yeah,
he just wants his stuff back.
He wants his stuff back. He needs money because he needs drugs. He's a drug addict for many years, many years, on and off, I think, the rest of his life.
So the court case dragged on for another couple of years, but in the end...
5 years, right to the end.
Liberace got very ill, and actually Scott did think, if I keep this going until Liberace's dead, I could go to court with his estate, and I'd be in a better chance of winning, but he just had enough at that point. They settled out of court.
Yeah.
I don't know what the term...
Time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so he says that where they went wrong is they used the trump card too early. And he sold the story to newspapers, and it was all printed, Liberace's ex-lover says this and this and this, and nobody believed it because Liberace stood up and said that I'm not gay, this man's trying to get money out of me, and it just...
And do you know what actually worked in his favour? Is that the judge threw out the Palimony case because it was based on a contract of sex, and you can't prove that. So he won the Palimony case, which was only one of the 12 charges. But what that meant is that Liberace could speak to the press and said, I've won. He was never anything. He was my chauffeur. He was blackmailing me. He got what he wanted from that. Yeah. Which is probably why Scott did settle out of court for the rest of it. Yeah. So Liberace is a brilliant PR man. Yeah. It does blow my mind that the gayest man on the planet has that massive fan base and doesn't even cross their minds that he's gay.
I know.
It's weird, isn't it? But I mean, in our lifetime...
There's camp and there's gay.
Yeah. But don't you remember, we grew up with Boy George. There was a huge amount of people who didn't even think he was gay.
Yeah.
There's nobody who looks more gay than Boy George.
I was a kid, but I thought I was going to grow up and marry him. I didn't see any reason why that wouldn't be the case. Yeah. I was only a kid, but if someone tells you something, though, you can be as camp as you like. If you say I'm not gay, then you're not gay. He didn't have to be. Yeah. He could have
when you love someone, when you have a hero, you literally believe everything they say. Yeah.
And he said it over and over and over again. Yeah. He went out with women. He was engaged to some ex-skater, all sorts.
And then he brought out his autobiography in 1986 where it said, I do like mature women, but as I grew older, I'm more attracted to the younger ones.
And fully went into, he literally switched he for she, and fully told loads of stories about all these different women. So why wouldn't you believe that?
I believed Barry Manilow.
Yeah.
So, Liberace contracts the AIDS virus.
HIV,
And he gets very ill.
And then he phones Scott to check he's all right.
To check he's all right.
Yeah. He does say, I think splitting up at that exact time will have saved my life.
Wow. So, Liberace phoned Scott while he was dying. So that does prove the connection. And this is after Scott's taken him to court. This is after everything's been through the press. Yet again, Scott is saying, I am Liberace's lover of many years. So he's totally... But even after all of that, Liberace is calling Scott saying, are you okay?
Yeah, and then he called him to the house when he was actually on his deathbed, and he just wanted to reminisce about all the good times they had, of which there were many. So it's lovely. It's just that he's never got over it. What's the bit that made you cry at the end then? Which bit?
Oh my God, are you kidding? The epilogue about what happened to this poor bloke after Liberace had died. Oh. Crikey, it blew my mind after everything he's been through. His life just didn't get any better, really. He started a nightclub and then got back into gangsters and drug dealers again. Opened the door one day and got shot 5 times.
Oh, yeah. That's not good. Yeah, but he got in with all the wrong people. I guess this comes from being a drug addict and dealing with drug dealers. But that nightclub he got in with, there's that whole story about...
The Wonderland killing.
Yes. Yeah. He's completely a witness. He was a witness and it's only come up years later.
Well, he should be dead.
He absolutely
They shot him
be.
5 times. And then he became a preacher.
Oh, so hang on. Let's say this Wonderland killings, it's a gang-style killing. And the bloke who commissioned this killing was in that nightclub when he was in there. He went off, he came back covered in blood and had done this mass killing. So Scott was a witness to him leaving and coming back covered in blood. He had to go into witness protection. He got given a new name, shipped to Florida, was he? And started a new life. But then he got into this evangelical thing, and he rose and rose because he was really good at it. And the police warned him. He said, to be fair, they warned him, if you got too good at it, you'll get publicity. And that could jeopardise your witness protection. Yeah. And he did get on TV, and then they did find him and shot him 5 times. And he somehow survived that.
And he's been in and out of prison. He's been
prison for drug abuse. He can't get off the drugs.
Do you know what? Because he still clearly loves animals and he still has animals. There's just some part of me thinks like, poor 18-year-old boy who just wanted to work with animals. And it's really sad that he never got to do it.
It is. And right at the beginning he says, I just wish I hadn't gone to that concert. And I hadn't met Liberace. It did destroy him.
I bet he did. Life. I bet he did, and I bet the high points of being with Liberace did nowhere come close to outweighing the
whole life of misery. I totally agree with that.
And I hold Liberace responsible for that. He's a fucking predator.
Yeah, and but I hold society ultimately to blame for that, for him having to be the whole homosexuality being completely repressed underground. And that's how these things manifest
I kind of get that, and I understand that. And I understand that when Liberace was a teenager, he had to suppress his feelings and didn't go through those normal things that most people go through at school, at getting a girlfriend and fumbling behind the bike sheds.
That's where I think
he wants to constantly repeat that thing he missed out on with young guys. Yeah. But as an adult, as a successful adult holding power... he totally abused that.
Yes, he did, and there's no repercussions. There's no sense of wrongdoing. In the middle of this book, he had a very near-death experience, and he prayed and prayed and prayed, and when he came through it, and the doctor says, there's no way you should have survived that, he then believed that God was on his side and he could do no wrong. And up to that point in his life, he thought he was a sinner and he would be punished and go to hell. And then he realised God loved him. After that, total freedom, he had no sense of responsibility to anything because he was God's
he was forgiven.
Chosen one.
Yeah.
He really messed this man's life up.
Yeah, he did actually. And do you know what? He messed the guys up. He messed all of these young guys up. Yeah. If they all wanted to write a book about Liberace, it would be a repeating story of abuse. So the moral of the story is don't go out.
Don't go out.
Don't go out. Stay at home. Like Barack Obama stayed at home and read books and became president.
And read books.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Thrift Shop Biography. We love making this podcast and we're absolutely thrilled that so many of you are already listening. We're new to this and you could really help us out by leaving us a review somewhere, wherever you listen to this podcast. And if you could share us, tell your friends about us or drop some links on social media. We have a Facebook page called Thrift Shop Biography, so make sure you come over there to hear about the episodes first and what else we're up to. Okay, see you next week. And if you're new here, there are loads more episodes now to go and listen in the back catalogue, so make sure you go and enjoy them. Okay, thank you very much.